For Sunday, February 19th, you found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, a big win for Georgia in the water wars against Florida, a second guilty plea in the city bribery scandal, and a cattle call, 18 candidates for one congressional seat in Georgia. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you can be with us on this Sunday. We begin with a huge win for the state of Georgia. Now, the governor is downplaying it a little bit, but I don't think so. I think that the special master in the water wars case among Georgia, Alabama, and Florida made a major ruling this week in Georgia's favor and slapped Florida down pretty thoroughly, I thought, Phil.
Well, I did too. The special master had said that the water cannot be capped here in Georgia. That was one of the big issues in this ongoing court suit, and they've been holding hearings for weeks and weeks now. So it is a good victory. It's a good sign for us. Obviously, that would have been economic devastation if that was agreed to. Now, it's still, as you know, it still has to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, so we still have to wait for a final determination.
But Jeff, a part of that ruling, which I found very interesting, and I've always kind of wondered about it. The special master says you can't go to the Supreme Court. Well, you can go, but you won't win because you didn't include the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the thinking, and they run the water. I always wondered about that.
That's exactly what the ruling says. It was really astonishing. We always expected for the special master to split the baby, and not give anybody anything of what they wanted. And you're right. I think that state leaders are going out of their way not to gloat, but this was clearly a win for Georgia.
Right. And I hope, Alexis, it doesn't mean, though, that we let up on water conservation efforts and all that sort of thing.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that worked in Georgia's favor was the fact that they could show water conservation, particularly in Metro Atlanta. They had reduced consumption by 10% while growing by exponential number. And I think that helped. And Florida, they said, evidently did not make a case for why it needed, or even for conservation.
Well, this isn't the end of our coverage of the water wars here on the Georgia Gang, but it's a nice break point, I think. It's going to be with us every week going forward, I'm afraid. Let's turn our attention to the state capitol. There's a lot of jockeying going on, but I think if we try to do big picture, we note that the governor signed the mid-year budget. Major feature of that is the pay raises for law enforcement people. Now they're debating the big budget, as they used to call it. They still call it that down there, the big budget?
$25 billion now.
That's coming for the next fiscal year. And there's a lot of money in that, too, including teacher pay raises.
2%.
And construction.
Right. $1 billion in construction. And, of course, one of the big projects that we know well in Metro Atlanta is that 400 I-285 project.
Well, yeah, and
oh, do I know it well?
The archives building downtown,
right, to be imploded and replaced with a
the new court building.
Well,
exactly
that's right. And then one more, which is a good one. The World Congress Center is getting a big infusion to kind of do their expansion and interconnectivity.
Well, you better with the Super Bowl coming and with the, can I say Super Bowl without people having a heart attack? But the Super Bowl is coming, the NCAA Final Four. That's good stuff. Among the more contentious issues under the Gold Dome, the bed tax passed quietly and quickly, as we acknowledged.
We call it the hospital provider fee.
Right, because they didn't want to spotlight it. It just went through like went through like a duck through a goose. And then we've got the online purchases interested me. The House has passed it, taxing people who sell online into Georgia if they have a facility or a certain number of employees. Is that the idea?
That's right.
And that's passing. That was always sacrosanct in years past.
That's right. I'm surprised there's not as much opposition.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that that's happening, but I still think it's not going to make a dent in people shopping online. It's still going to be a challenge for the brick and mortar places to stay afloat because it's so convenient.
Well, it is,
no question.
but it is going to give Georgia an opportunity to capture some of those dollars, and they ought to be able to do that.
I don't think it changes the marketing.
Right.
It just gives Georgia a piece of the action.
Right.
Speaking of a piece of the action, fantasy football, one of Phil's topics. Phil raised this a couple of years ago. I think they're kind of closing the barn door after the horse is out because fantasy football isn't what it was 2 years ago. But there was a debate this
Well, it's
week
still
about
$1 billion plus industry, and again, we need to capture some of that
the
money.
revenue.
Notice
It beats raising taxes like the liberals want to do.
I just
Except
flashed
that
on.
or making provider fees more widespread, like they've done in the last few years.
I just flashed on something Newt Gingrich used to call the Republican establishment, and he called them tax collectors for the welfare state. So here's my friend Phil talking about capturing some of this revenue.
That's right.
You got to make sure we get our revenue.
It's better than tax hikes.
And the Plan B bill, as it's called, that's really inside baseball. But the failure of the governor's constitutional amendment to take over schools, failing schools, has led to some legislation finally introduced this week. Excuse me. And they're going to have turnaround specialists in the schools.
Yeah.
That's
Turnaround
right.
specialists.
Lordy.
What does it all mean?
Well, I've got a copy of the bill right here.
You do?
It's evolving, and yeah, it's House Bill 338, and it calls for a 2-year period to implement an intensive school improvement plan. And you've got, it's actually, they're kind of quibbling over who should be over this turnaround person. Should it be the State Department of Education or the elected state school superintendent? I don't think that's been resolved as we do the show now.
My understanding is that there were some very specific requirements for the person who would get this job. They'd have to have 15 years of experience. They'd have to have some experience as both a public school principal and somewhat of a turnaround artist, right?
That's right.
So that's not a long list of people.
Well, that's right. And also, they've got, if they're being uncooperative, it's not just so much that it's underperforming school, but if they're being uncooperative, there are some penalties there, including removal of school board members and some very
and that's power that the governor already has.
I was going to say.
That's right.
It sounds like Amendment 1 by another name to me in many of the
But
aspects
it's not as strong.
But
It doesn't look nearly as strong, Alexis. Come on, turnaround specialists? Who's that? You? Me? I mean,
yeah, nobody. That's the whole point. Who's done that? Who has done that?
Well, there are experts and consultants out there. It's a
I
cottage
bet
industry.
there are.
Exactly.
Consultant for everything. One last thing on the General Assembly. I was struck by this. There's serious discussion of giving a tax credit to people who improve their yachts. I don't think it's new yachts. I think it's improving
Yacht improvement.
your yacht. How many people does that affect? Yachts worth, I think, more than $500,000.
Well, it's quite
There's
an
not
industry,
one among
though.
us.
Isn't there?
Not
Isn't
one
the
among
yacht
us.
industry
Not one among us.
growing?
That's so funny.
You have a yacht, isn't it?
There's not one among us.
Not one.
It would be interesting to get behind this and see
whose yacht they're talking about.
Whose yacht
All right,
they're
now, if we
talking
debate
about. That's
the
exactly
marijuana content of medical marijuana, which they're trying to lower,
That's right.
you do affect a lot of families. Phil and I were talking about that. But the yacht tax?
Well, I agree. There's all sorts of tax breaks. Remember, Delta Airlines wants a break
Fine
on
on
its
them.
fuel, too. There's no level playing field, and that's a huge problem for the legislature.
All right, we got to get out. When we come back, Familiar Turf, we'll be talking to you about that second guilty plea at City Hall and where it might lead. In this case, some roads seem to lead to Mississippi. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Before we turn our steely gazes to City Hall, one major item in the General Assembly that I jumped over is the casino gambling legislation. Phil is our specialist in those who rewrite the casino bill. And we have yet another rewrite.
Another rewrite. It's been going on for how many weeks now on the Georgia Gang? We've been talking about
do
it.
whatever it takes to get it through.
Well, that's right, Alexis. In fact, I talked on Friday with State Senator Brandon Beach, who is the author on the Senate side, and they've changed. Remember, it was a population bill we talked about?
Yes.
Well, now they feel that might be unconstitutional, so they're throwing out the population stipulations for cities and counties where the destination resorts are supposed to be. And what they're doing now is they're going by 2 regions. Now, the first region for a destination resort would be the 5-county Atlanta area. The second destination is anywhere else outside of the first region.
Anywhere else in the state.
But here's there's just one stipulation, Alexis, and we laugh.
Isn't
It's
funny?
got to be near a city where they have 125,000 square foot convention center. It's got to be within 30 miles
Oh, my
of the
goodness.
destination
Wow.
resort.
So that would,
that's the
I
new
guess, be Atlanta or,
Savannah.
well, it could be Clayton County, couldn't it? Or
Well,
something?
Clayton County is
It's
part of
part
the
of the
five-county
five-county
metro.
metro.
Well, yeah, so that's
That's
yeah,
right.
that's
So
covered.
it's covered.
But it could
So
be
it's
Augusta,
Savannah,
could
it
be
could be
Augusta.
Augusta, it could
Augusta.
be Columbus.
That's right.
The same,
Maybe Macon.
the same cities.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Thank you. That's right. That was very, you're very perceptive.
There's more than one way to
But
skin a cat.
Alexis, to your point about they need to get more votes, this is interesting. They're still, as we speak, they're fiddling around with the percentages. You remember one bill a couple weeks ago was 50% of the revenues go to the Hope Scholarship Program. That may be lowered to 30%. Why? They want to get the votes of rural legislators, so they're going to give money to rural trauma centers and health care.
Yeah,
So,
that's what they should.
yeah, it's so you're getting more votes from rural legislators.
You know, while they're at it and they keep rewriting it, why not add some funds for guys who need to rebuild their yachts?
Well, I don't think that's going to make it, but I will say this. I'm told that...
Take care of that thorny problem, the yacht problem.
You're hung up on yachts, but one last point on this casino legislation. I think you'll see the enabling legislation go out of House on Tuesday and on the Senate on Thursday.
Okay, now to more important things, frankly, and that is the second plea, which we expected in the burgeoning Atlanta City Hall bribery scandal. The contractor from Lithonia named Richards pleaded guilty this week, said the recession hurt him, and his lawyer said he did some things that were wrong. Those
good
would be
work, but he
payoffs
did wrong.
at City Hall to get contracts. Reporters are starting to go, as we suggested last week, through those 1.4 million pages of documents, and they're turning up stuff. And I noticed that they have a whole section called the Bickers Files on Mitzi Bickers, who was a city official, a pastor, chairman of the Atlanta School Board, and the trail with Mitzi Bickers leads to Jackson, Mississippi, and then leads back to Atlanta. It looks bad. She was, in fact, hired as a campaign reward by Kasim Reed. Wasn't a big job, but she was hired by Kasim Reed, and she is in the crosshairs of the feds. This doesn't look like it's going to end well at City Hall. Jeff, you have a thought on that?
Well, you know, it's a very interesting development, both in terms of C.P. Richards and E.R. Mitchell, who had pleaded earlier. And the charge is not, and what they pleaded to is not that they committed bribery. It was a conspiracy to commit bribery,
Right.
passing along dollars to some third party who was supposed to have committed said bribery. The question, of course, is whether or not said third party, whomever that may be, in fact did that. And so we've got two people who have pleaded guilty to a conspiracy to commit a crime, a bribery, that may or may not at this point have actually occurred. That part the feds have not told us about.
Well, we learned something new in this case of Richard's plea. It was interesting. Last week I'd mentioned that E.R. Mitchell put his wife's name on one of the contracts to get double brownie points.
Yes.
Well, now we learn in this Richards case that they went one better. I hadn't thought of this one. They put his mother's name on a contract to get double minority brownie points. And I stand by what I've been saying. This case throws into question the merit of all these dubious affirmative action schemes that we've lived with for the last 30 years as a gift to corrupt politicians.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I hate that kind of a connection because we've had.
It's
you know,
inescapable, Jeff.
We've had criminal activity, bribery, and all kinds of stuff as long as there's been money in politics and in public contracts, well before minorities were even allowed to
But
participate.
that's not the point. We know that. But the point is, this has evolved into schemes
It's
where you have
institutionalized
points.
scheming.
And you know, we do know that, getting back to the main subject at hand here, we do know that the investigation is expanding. We know that there's dozens of assistant U.S. attorneys and agents working on this. We know that people are singing, and how far it spreads into City Hall. We were talking about targets last week. I think you may see some more targets in City Hall.
But we're talking about two contractors. Two contractors.
You don't know if it's two. You don't know if it's how many more.
Right now we're talking
But there
about
are lots
two.
of contracts.
Absolutely, there are lots of contracts. But I'm just saying that this doesn't
We're
mean
just
that
getting
it's
started,
widespread.
Alexis.
That's what I think. I think there's just, we got to get out.
And we might be just getting started. We might be just ending. We really don't know. We need to see some direction from the U.S. Attorney's Office
1.4
on where
million
this thing is
pages.
going.
Our colleagues are hard at work.
Pages, yeah, lots of contracts, lots of pages.
We got to get out. When we come back, in California, they call their primary system, and in Louisiana, they call it the jungle primary because they're nonpartisan and they go crazy. Well, that's happening in Georgia now in the Republican 6th District. We'll tell you about it when we come back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And don't forget us on Facebook and on YouTube. You can see all our broadcasts on our own YouTube channel. The resignation of Tom Price is confirmation to Donald Trump's cabinet has left a special election in Georgia in the 6th District, which is mostly North Fulton, Cobb, North DeKalb. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it today other than to observe the fact that there are 18 candidates. The reason is it's nonpartisan. It's a special election. So you've got an equal number, really, of Republicans and Democrats and a bunch of independents seizing on just the off chance they might be able to get into a runoff and make something happen. So then, Phil, the question is, who's in the runoff?
Well, that is the big question. Of course, it's going to be in April, and you say it's nonpartisan and officially, you're right, but we do know who the Democrats and Republicans are, and it's an interesting lot. There's all sorts of factions in both the Democratic candidates and also the Republican candidates. It is a Republican district. Tom Price.
We all know that
Tom Price
was
reelected with a healthy 60-some% of the vote. So I think what's going to happen is that whoever the Republican is, I think you'll basically see all the Republican factions unite behind that person. I don't know who that person is.
No, I disagree. In the runoff.
In the runoff.
But not before the runoff.
Yeah, in the runoff. In the runoff.
No, it's a free-for-all before.
It's a free-for-all before.
Well, it is, and it's not, because you've got, the powers that be lining up behind certain candidates. Dan Moody, for instance, is being supported by folks in the governor's office and others. Right. Karen Handel is going to
great name recognition.
Outsized amount of support because of her great name recognition. She has been elected statewide in the past.
Judson Hill claims Cobb County as his own.
Judson Hill. So you've got some outliers there, some standouts, I think, who are going to be able to take a large portion of that vote in the primary. And I love the fact that Democrats are running in this race. This is a district that Donald Trump won by a single point. A lot of folks are upset, obviously, with what's going on, this incredible disarray in Washington.
A lot of people love it.
I think that
a lot of people love it.
Oh, they love it. They love lies. And I think that you're gonna,
you got a guy who worked for John Lewis.
Absolutely.
And
why
Hank
not?
Johnson,
and Hank Johnson. And why not go for it?
And this is a qualification in the 6th
some of these
District?
other folks.
Come on.
No, and he's a young, future forward-looking person.
He's running in the wrong district, that fellow John Ossoff.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now.
Necessarily.
He knocks on the door and says, I work for John Lewis and Hank Johnson, and that door slams. I'll tell you
All
what.
he's got to do is talk about the issues that are facing folks in that county.
Exactly.
All right, let me change the subject. I want to get to some of the other local news we've skipped, because I think it's important that we note that Cobb County has announced its plans to run that circulator bus system around the new SunTrust Stadium. The Braves are opening up in April.
You're right.
We're approaching that. And that circulator bus we learned about a couple of years ago is now going to be up and running.
That's right.
And if you look at the map of it, it works. Park your car anywhere there, grab the bus, you're at the ballpark.
That's right. We toured it, and there's all these destination areas where you can get on the circulator. I drove by, my office is nearby the bridge that they're doing over 285, and that's coming along nicely. Although I heard Sandy Springs Mayor Rusty Paul speak just the other day, and he says it's still going to be a mess that first few games.
I believe that too.
Well, I think it is.
My eye doctor is up there at the Cumberland Mall area. It's a mess. It's already a mess, and it's going to be more of a mess with people trying to go to the ball game.
Yeah, but the plan.
Well, it's a mess now because of all the construction.
I'm the optimist on this.
And it's a mess
the
because of all
plan
the
is starting to go into effect. In nothing really in DeKalb this week. Let me just say, well, there is one DeKalb item worth mentioning. The whole Vernon Jones, Burl Ellis corruption stuff began with a grand jury looking into the case of a man named Paul Champion, who was a tree cutter. And after we taped last week, we learned that Paul Champion settled with the county to the tune of about $700,000 that he was discriminated against, and they wouldn't pay him. And his attorney's fees to one Bob Wilson, that great stalwart of the public trust, is 800 grand to Bob Wilson, who routinely sponges off the New Cities, the Decatur School Board. I mean,
Man,
now
you
he
are
gets
tough on Bob
800
Wilson.
grand.
I saw him recently. He said to tell you hello.
Yeah.
I don't. How can he get 800 grand out of a $700,000?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's got to split it. No. Champion got 700,000, and the lawyers, and I don't know whether it was Bob and other lawyers, got more.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. I just wanted to get that on the record. So, Burl Ellis went to jail. Vernon Jones never got indicted, but the lawyers got 800 grand for the start of the whole thing. Oh, what a system we have. He can buy a yacht. How about that?
And pay the increased taxes.
And get tax credits for upgrading it.
All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Aha, we've got a little extra time, which allows me to mention, my long thought, I've said this before, that Sally Yates, the former U.S. attorney, was a career prosecutor, and that she generally did the right thing in her job downtown Atlanta, and she went to justice, and she was number 2. And then she turned on Donald Trump and got fired, as she well should have. But even then, I said, wait a minute, Sally Yates is still a great career prosecutor.
Well,
she
let me
came out
interrupt you.
this week as a full politician, showing up at the Carter Center to a standing ovation. Nice, huh?
I don't think
Yeah,
she asked
she
for the
didn't
standing
act right.
ovation.
It
She
was-
just
it was
showed up and people gave her a
spontaneous.
She
standing
knew why
ovation.
she was there.
You know why she got a standing ovation? Because she blew the cover on this whole Russian thing. It was Sally Yates right here in
Thank you.
Atlanta who blew
Well,
the
she's
cover
my
on the
loser.
whole thing.
Well,
She's my loser.
And my winner.
And
It was
my
packed.
winner.
The whole
we gotta go.
The whole place was packed with
Totally,
liberals
totally
anyway.
vindicated.
John
the way,
Ossoff might have been there for all I know.
Last Friday's Wall Street Journal had a big piece just stripping the bark off of Sally Yates, that she wasn't all that great a prosecutor. So check out
Oh, please.
last
I
Friday's
missed that.
Wall
I'll have
Street
to catch
Journal.
up to that. Go for it, Jeff. Winners, losers.
Okay. Michael Flynn, I get he's a loser, but I
Lost
don't
his
understand
job.
why they're punishing liars in the Trump administration. I mean, you'd have to get rid of everybody. This replacement, Harwark, who was an
turned it
retired
down.
admiral, right,
Yeah.
and Navy SEAL, said that he didn't want to be involved in some sort of expletive sandwich.
Did he say that?
Yes.
Oh,
Did
I
you
thought
know
he...
this is the Georgia gang? Do you have any Georgia?
I know you don't want to talk about
Oh, I'll
politics,
talk about it.
Washington.
Oh, I'll
No,
talk
you
about
don't.
it.
I mean, it's so
I'll talk
embarrassing.
about it.
And how about that record electoral vote that Trump got?
Oh, listen, I tell you what, you're just mad. You haven't gotten over it.
And talk about putting all the Negroes together. Talking about April. Don't you know
You
those
haven't
guys
gotten over
put it
November
together?
8th.
Yeah, you put the meeting together.
for
Get
the
over the
Congressional
press
Black
con.
Caucus.
Get over November 8th. Get over November 8th.
All right,
We're
Alexis,
over
go.
that.
Winners
Worried
and
about
losers.
What is
Go
this,
ahead.
February, whatever this is.
Do your winners and losers.
All right, thank you. First, I want to congratulate the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival for another record-setting year festival that concluded this past week with 37,000 people watching more than 75 movies and films around town for the festival. Congratulations to Kenny Blank and Steve Leibowitz. Also, on a personal privilege, Dr. David Resnick made a house call to my mom when she was at Grady Hospital and at A.G. Rhodes to replace her denture, which she sorely lost. And he was
Lost her
wonderful.
teeth?
Lost her
Poor
teeth.
thing.
But she's all right now, and she's recovering. She had a stroke. But thank you, Dr. Resnick, and his assistant, Janai Ship.
All right, Phil.
Well, CNN, the Atlanta-based, cable TV
Formerly
program,
Atlanta-based.
Yeah, New York and Atlanta. It's the loser. It's so slanted against Donald Trump. Objective journalism has gone out the window. All of the anchors all throughout the day hate him. But my winner, believe it or not, is Jeff Zucker, who runs Turner. Why is he my winner?
Why?
Because he made Donald Trump the celebrity that he is. He took a bet on Donald J. Trump, and he gave him the Apprentice show. And so he made Donald J. Trump. So thank you, Jeff Zucker.
That's a great point. I've forgotten that.
Yes,
So
and then my
Donald Trump
loser,
would
I'm
remember to be
sorry,
grateful.
is I want to give her a chance, but Atlanta's new police chief, Erica Shields, she had a news conference a week ago. I was disappointed. We have 111 murders. The murder rate is going up. I just didn't hear enough on the gang problem, the growing gang problem, and I hope she
Oh,
tackles
God,
it.
for a moment, I thought you were talking about us.
Not us. We're
Scared
innocent.
me.
The growing gang problem.
She probably thinks we are a growing gang problem.
Well, I've got a couple here. I'm going to start with the U.S. House of Representatives, which voted again to completely defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion mill and killer of babies. I think that the House made its
Such a total
sentiments.
mischaracterization, Dick.
That's
Shame
what they
on you.
do. They kill babies. And also, sometimes you like a company. Well, they got a little company that I've always patronized, and I ordered a dinner for them from Valentine's Day. They didn't get it to me. So I would condemn the company or give them another chance. What do you think?
I wouldn't.
What's
give
the
them-
Really a
name?
good company. Well, you use them instead of flowers. You know, if somebody's sick or whatever, you want to have a nice meal at the house, I think we give them another chance.
Okay.
They got overwhelmed for Valentine's
Are
Day.
you still hungry?
You still waiting for the dinner?
Still waiting for the food.
Oh no!
No.
I might
The
go
food,
someplace
the
else.
food came at 9:40 at night
Wow.
on Valentine's Day. I
Yeah.
can't stay up that late.
Right.
Okay, we'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
Funny.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.